Everything you think you know about ninjas is almost completely wrong. The black suits, the throwing stars, the ability to disappear in plain sight. The deadly assassins moving silently through the night to eliminate high-value targets. This version of the ninja was created largely in the 20th century by novelists, filmmakers, and marketing. The actual historical ninja was a very different kind of person doing a very different kind of work. They were not primarily assassins, and they did not primarily wear black. They were intelligence operatives who specialized in gathering information, creating confusion, and surviving in hostile territory. Most of them were farmers by day and spent their operational lives trying very hard not to be noticed. The skill that defined the real ninja was not combat ability. It was the ability to be completely unremarkable in any social environment they entered. This is what your life as a ninja actually looked like. Part 1. Where ninjas actually came from. The historical ninja emerged from the Iga and Koka regions of central Japan during the 15th and 16th centuries. These were mountainous areas with difficult terrain and a tradition of independent local clans. The geography made these regions difficult for central authorities to control. This isolation allowed the development of specialized knowledge and techniques that were passed down within families. The people who developed these techniques were not trained warriors from the samurai class. They were primarily farmers and minor landholders who occupied a much lower social position. Japan's feudal society placed the samurai class at the top of the military hierarchy. Ninja practitioners operated well below that level in social status. The techniques they developed were practical responses to the problems of people without military resources. A samurai could challenge an opponent directly because he had the legal right and the military training to do so. A farmer spy could not challenge anyone directly without being killed immediately. So the techniques that developed were about avoiding direct confrontation entirely. Intelligence gathering, disguise, psychological manipulation, and escape were the core skills. Direct combat was a last resort to be avoided rather than a primary capability to be developed. The word ninja itself comes from the characters for perseverance and person, roughly meaning one who endures. The endurance referred to was not physical toughness in combat. It referred to the patience and discipline required to operate in hostile environments without being detected. Part 2. What training actually involved. Ninja training within the Iga and Koka traditions was a family inheritance rather than a formal school. Knowledge was passed from parent to child across generations within specific family lineages. There was no central ninja academy where students arrived and were taught a standardized curriculum. Different families specialized in different aspects of the overall knowledge base. Some families concentrated on herbal knowledge, including the preparation of medicines, poisons, and smoke compounds. Others focused on survival techniques for operating in wilderness environments for extended periods without resupply. Navigation, weather reading, and foraging were as important as any combat skill. The combat training that did exist was practical rather than elegant. It was not about developing a beautiful fighting style suitable for demonstration or competition. It was about surviving a specific situation long enough to escape and complete the mission. Shuriken, the throwing stars associated with ninja and popular culture, were real tools, but they were not primarily weapons designed to kill opponents at range. They were used to distract or momentarily disable a pursuer to create time for escape. Throwing a shuriken at someone and then running away was the intended use, not throwing a shuriken and then staying to fight. The physical training emphasized endurance over strength. A ninja who needed to cover long distances quickly on foot needed cardiovascular capacity more than muscular power. Speed of movement and the ability to sustain it over hours was more valuable than the ability to lift heavy things. Swimming was a critical skill because rivers and moats were common obstacles in the environments where operations occurred. Part 3. What actual operations looked like. The primary mission of a ninja operative was intelligence gathering rather than assassination. A lord or warlord hired ninja practitioners to find out what rival factions were planning. This required the operative to enter hostile territory, observe, listen, and return without being detected. The most effective method was not stealth in the Hollywood sense of moving invisibly through darkness. The most effective method was adopting a convincing cover identity and operating openly in plain sight. A ninja might spend weeks or months in a target location disguised as a merchant, a monk, or a craftsman, building relationships, gathering information through ordinary conversation, and leaving without raising suspicion. The black suit that popular culture associates with ninjas was a later theatrical invention. Historical sources suggest ninja operatives typically wore the clothing appropriate to whatever role they were playing. A farmer disguised as a merchant wore merchant clothing. A merchant disguised as a monk wore monk clothing. The goal was to look exactly like everyone else in the environment. An operative dressed in black standing out against a night sky would be immediately visible to alert guards. If assassination was required, it was done through methods that did not require direct combat. Poison was preferred over a blade because it could be administered without physical confrontation. Fire was used to create confusion and cover a retreat, rather than as a direct attack. Psychological operations were considered more effective than physical ones in many situations. Spreading false rumors, creating the appearance of supernatural events, and undermining the confidence of enemy troops were all documented tactics. The goal in every situation was the same: achieve the objective and get out without anyone knowing you were there. Part 4. The social reality of being a ninja. Operating as a ninja practitioner in feudal Japan carried significant social costs. The samurai class viewed ninja techniques as dishonorable by the standards of Bushido. Samurai were expected to fight openly, announce their lineage before combat, and accept death rather than flee. The ninja approach of deception, disguise, and avoiding direct confrontation was the opposite of every samurai value. This created a paradox that ran through the entire history of ninja practitioners. They were hired and used by lords and warlords who found them extremely useful, and simultaneously looked down upon by those same lords as practitioners of dishonorable methods. The useful servant, who is also socially contemptible, is a familiar historical figure. Ninja practitioners rarely advertised what they did because advertising it had no benefit and considerable risk. A known ninja operative was a target for elimination by rival factions. Being unknown was the only protection the occupation offered. The families of the Iga and Koka regions maintained their secrecy across generations. When Oda Nobunaga unified large parts of Japan in the late 16th century, he moved against the Iga region specifically. In 1581, he launched a military campaign known as the Tensho Iga War to destroy the independent ninja clans. His forces significantly outnumbered the Iga defenders, and the campaign was devastating. Many ninja practitioners were killed, and the Iga region lost much of its independence. The survivors dispersed across Japan, and in some cases entered the direct service of major lords. Tokugawa Ieyasu famously employed ninja practitioners as intelligence operatives after unifying Japan in the early 17th century. By this point, the golden age of independent ninja operation was effectively over. Part 5. What the mythology got wrong and why it matters. The modern ninja mythology developed through a specific and traceable historical process. Japanese theater and storytelling traditions began exaggerating ninja capabilities from the 18th century onward. Stories of ninja who could walk through walls, become invisible, and control animals spread and were popularized. These stories served a purpose for the storytellers but had almost no connection to historical practice. When Japan began exporting its culture globally in the 20th century, the theatrical ninja went with it. American and European audiences encountered the ninja through martial arts films, comic books, and eventually video games. Each retelling added new capabilities and stripped away more historical reality. By the time the ninja reached mainstream Western popular culture, it bore almost no resemblance to the historical practitioner. The historical ninja was a patient, disciplined, and highly adaptable intelligence operative. These are qualities that do not translate easily into exciting visual entertainment. A person spending 3 weeks convincingly pretending to be a merchant while listening to conversations does not make for dramatic cinema. A person jumping between rooftops in a black suit absolutely does. So the patient intelligence operative was replaced by the acrobatic assassin. And the acrobatic assassin became what most people think of when they hear the word ninja. The real practitioners of ninjutsu were solving a specific problem faced by people with limited power and resources. How do you gather critical information and influence events when you cannot fight your way to the objective? The answer they developed was sophisticated, effective, and genuinely remarkable. It just looked nothing like what you have seen on a screen. The historical ninja occupied one of the most difficult positions in Japanese feudal society. They were indispensable to the lords and warlords who hired them. They were socially beneath the military class they served. They operated in hostile territory under false identities with no official status and no protection if caught. Being captured meant being killed, usually without any acknowledgement of who you were or what you had been doing. There was no rescue, no negotiation, and no recognition of the mission you had been sent to complete. The families who maintained these traditions did so across generations at considerable personal risk. They passed down knowledge that was genuinely valuable precisely because no one outside their community knew they had it. The throwing stars used by historical practitioners were genuinely real. The black suits seen in films were not historically accurate at all. The patience, the discipline, and the ability to become invisible by being completely ordinary were the actual skills. Those skills are considerably harder to develop than anything you have seen demonstrated on a screen, and considerably more impressive once you understand what they were actually being used for.